Do you believe in alternate universes?
You are listening to Delayed Replay.
The improvised movie review podcast. Wink.
Everything is fine here. We're all fine. Just sit tight and listen to them talk about the movies they definitely saw.
Don't delay. We have to listen right away.
Hey everyone, this is Steven here with a quick note about this novel episode. So Star Wars The High Republic, Light of the Jedi, came out shortly before Star Wars Celebration weekend. And when it came out, I blazed through it in a day, finished it quickly, and Starrapter had also finished it. So we recorded our episode before Celebration. And of course, thanks to Celebration, like the High Republic panel over there, people know what's coming in Phase 2 of the High Republic. So late in this particular episode, you might hear us mention stuff about like, oh, are the Sith in this or aren't they? And we kind of have our answer thanks to the panel. So yeah, this episode will probably be coming out pretty late, like weeks after we've recorded it. Just looking at the schedule and like how busy I may be. And there will also be a Star Wars Celebration look back episode, just getting people, having them recollect their memories of it. And in between, there will be an episode on the Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard, I believe. So yeah, kind of weird, but yeah, that's pretty much what's going on. And without further delay, enjoy the episode. Hello, listeners. This is Steven Schinder, host of the Delayed Replay podcast here at channel 1138, the site name that I usually forget to mention, which is not my intention, but it happens. So this is a different kind of episode. We're doing a book review on this one. It is a recent Star Wars novel called The High Republic, Light of the Jedi. And joining me is Chris Abbott, aka Starrapter.
Hello, Steven. Hello, everybody listening to Delayed Replay. Yeah, I was waiting for this book for a long time, and I'm happy to say that I've finally gotten a chance to experience it. It's very important for Star Wars because, as those of you who aren't aware, the High Republic is a brand new age in the Star Wars timeline. It takes place 200 years before the Phantom Menace, so it's very exciting. We're seeing the Jedi and the Republic at their height. And, well, we get to see Jedi being, well, what Jedi are meant to do, which is to protect the Republic, to look for the common interests of the citizens of the Republic. And at the same time, they're actually trying to become like the pioneers and go outside into the places that aren't really discovered yet by the Republic, such as the Outer Rim. So this is huge for Star Wars. This is really a big milestone because for the first time, we are really getting away from the Skywalker saga. Now that that's all over with, we are getting brand new stories. It's not going quite far as back as the Old Republic, but still it's in this timeline that is actually never been explored, even in Legends or what they are known as the Expanded Universe. So that has been very exciting, and it's awesome that Lucasfilm is starting to tell these stories that involve all these new characters that we've never seen or heard of before until reading these stories. And Light of the Jedi is huge because this is the book that's starting it all. This is the place you want to start because what Lucasfilm has been doing is making sort of like a Marvel Cinematic Universe equivalent in the Star Wars publishing route. They're going to have comics. We're going to have several books. And this is all really like phase one. There's going to be comic books, but maybe there will be video games, and they haven't said anything about movies or TV series yet. But based on the popularity of how this will do, you know, you never know what could be in the future. So, yeah, I'm very excited to finally dive into this one, Steven.
Yeah, for sure. Like, we've had projects here and there that aren't as focused on the Skywalker saga. You know, like we've had The Mandalorian and some books and comics here and there and Jedi Fallen Order. But by and large, it feels like the Skywalker story has been top priority for Lucasfilm for the last several years, since like the Disney buyout. But like they're finally like going in on this era, at least in publishing for now. And yeah, like you, I would love to see this High Republic era get explored in like animation, video games, and live action stuff. So yeah, like we're at a really good start, and you can see the passion that went into this, even just from this book alone. When they announced this at, I think it was 2019's celebration, like it was under the codename Project Luminous. What did you think that meant at the time?
Yeah, it's interesting because there was a quote, and I wish I had it pulled up right now, but it said something about the Force, and it really went into, I think, like it was Ben Kenobi's quote, a Force is what gives its Jedi its power and all that kind of stuff that he was saying in New Hope, and it says until Project Luminous. So it was like, wait a minute, is there going to be some kind of master plan where the Force wasn't everything we thought it was? So at the time, it was interesting because half the people I was talking to were saying, oh, this is a brand new era of Star Wars storytelling. And then you had the other half of people saying, oh, this is just another, from a certain point of view, The Empire Strikes Back. And, even back then, it was clearly evident that they wouldn't be like pushing these 5 huge authors, which are Claudia Gray, we have Daniel Jose Older, we have Kevin Scott, we have Charles Soule, and we have Justina Ireland. They wouldn't be pushing those 5 authors the way they were if they were not doing something a little bit bigger than just basically a pseudo novelization of The Empire Strikes Back. But it was something that I was excited for, but I really had no idea. I had a feeling that this could be a book series, and well, I was pleasantly surprised when I found out it was actually more than a book series. But there's going to be the IDW comics that are going to explore Yoda and the younglings 200 years before we see him in the Phantom Menace. And we're also going to get the Marvel comics. As of recording this today, we have just received the first couple pages, not colored, but still, they look great with the pencils and the ink right now, the first 4 pages from Kevin Scott's Marvel series. So all in all, I was like, okay, I'm optimistic about this. I'm very excited. And it was a long wait till we actually got to see what the heck this was all about, because there were several other conventions between Celebration Chicago 2019 and when it was finally announced in 2020 of February. We had San Diego Comic-Con, we had New York Comic-Con, which I was at, and they even made a joke during the PowerPoint for that book panel I was at New York Comic-Con. They had the Project Luminous folder on the desktop before the presentation started. I'm looking at it, and I overheard one of the creatives at Lucasfilm, me and Dominic Jones from the Star Wars Underworld, were sitting near the front row, and somebody's like, oh yeah, that's just all the secret stuff. I'm like, oh, can somebody please click on that so we can see what's in there? So it took us forever to finally figure out what the Project Luminous was, and it turns out that it's the High Republic. So yeah, I mean, my optimism and my excitement level, my hype level, if you want, it was very high going into this thing. It definitely reached that point, and I think it maybe even exceeded it after reading this book. I think it really pulled through on the hopes and the beliefs that I think this would propel Star Wars forward.
Yeah, and we are getting, from a certain point of view, book for The Empire Strikes Back, but that's separate from this. It's great that we're getting both of those things. And I think at some point, like when The Mandalorian came out, I wondered whether Project Luminous might actually be about like an in-depth look at Yoda's species and their relationship to the Force. But then we found out about this High Republic announcement, and it's 200 years before the Phantom Menace. And yeah, like it's just a great era to be exploring now. So Light of the Jedi is written by Charles Soule. Now, I'm sure you have read at least some of Soule's past works, right?
I think this is one of the best writers in Star Wars, and I'm actually putting him up there with not just the books and the literary works, but with the movies. Charles Soule, he understands Star Wars just as good as some of these other writers, such as Claudia Gray, who's also part of High Republic. He gets it. Now, he's primarily a comic book writer for Marvel. His first series was a miniseries called Lando, and it added so much depth to the relationship of Lando and Lobot before the events of Empire Strikes Back. Then he went on and he played in the prequel era. He did a miniseries, Obi-Wan and Anakin, which is great because it really gives us that experience of what was going on with the training between Obi-Wan and Anakin, even the Anakin's disillusion in the Jedi. It's a very eye-opening series. And we also got the Poe Dameron, which was like over 30 issues of Poe Dameron before the events of The Force Awakens, and it actually goes past the events of The Force Awakens in between Last Jedi. So that was great because we're seeing a sequel trilogy characters. And we also got what I think is the best Star Wars comics line to date, and that is Volume 2 of Darth Vader, 25 issues of Vader becoming Vader. Vader Year 1. If you guys have ever read Batman Year 1, it's pretty much like Vader Year 1 from that moment he gets in a suit. He basically learns how to create his lightsaber, and he slaughters the Jedi from the survivors of Order 66, and he creates the Inquisitorius, and you find out how he gets to his humble abode on Mustafar. So that story was just incredible. And he's actually writing right now, he's doing the mainline series of Star Wars. It's taking place between Empire and Return of the Jedi. That Shadows of the Empire, as I like to put it, era in Star Wars. So this guy's been all over the place with Star Wars. It's every reason to believe that like Lucasfilm has so much trust in this guy because he has written in every era of Star Wars, and now you can say he's even written in an era of Star Wars that's brand new with the High Republic. So this guy has written books before. It's not just he's not only just solely for comics. He has written his own novel before, and I wish I wasn't blanking on the name. Is it called Curse Words or something? I think that could be it, or something, or that might be one of his comic book lines. But yeah, so he's a literary person in and out from any kind of publishing, so he gets it. And yeah, so what about you? Have you read any of his comics or any of his other prior stories, Stephen?
Yeah, I've read all of his Star Wars stuff. I've also actually read some Swamp Thing comics that Charles Soule wrote.
Really? I never even knew he wrote Swamp Thing. That's crazy.
Yeah, it was during the New 52, and I recall that like he did the ending to that series as well, and I wasn't very satisfied with the ending, just kind of like how I wasn't very satisfied with the final issue of Darth Vader, but other than that, it was a really cool ride, and there's like some good art along the way, so yeah.
Nice.
Like with the Darth Vader ending, it's just that I felt like the visions confused the fans too much, which is like all these fan theories like, oh, Sidious is Shmi's, like they made Anakin or whatever, when really that wasn't the intention. So
yeah, but definitely definitely left it a little bit ambiguous, but then people really took it and run with it.
Yeah, but I agree that like for the most part he does great stuff with Star Wars. He's like really up there. There are just like these little things here and there that I'm kind of like critical about. Like for example, in the Rise of Kylo Ren miniseries, like I don't know whose
about
idea.
that. That was such a good one.
Well, I mean, I have mixed feelings about that one, but like I don't know like whose idea this was, but the whole thing of like the Knights of Ren being founded by a guy named Ren who calls his lightsaber the Ren, and it's like super confusing if you're like explaining it to just a regular person, like Kylo Ren and the Knights of Ren lore and all that. So I wasn't a huge fan of like that whole naming convention.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the Kylo Ren miniseries, I thought it was excellent because what it does is it takes you into that pivotal moment that I believe we should have gotten in the movies. I mean, this is not a sequel trilogy discussion at all, but I think that some of the stuff in that comic should have been in the movie. The transformation from Ben Solo to Kylo Ren, I feel like that was just maybe too important to leave out and just to put in a comic book that only maybe 5% of the fans are going to read.
Yeah, and it's surprising that they did it as a comic miniseries rather than a novel, you know?
Yeah, I mean, there was a rumor a long time ago. There was like a leak, like, oh, there's going to be a Kylo Ren book. I'm like, oh, I'm still waiting for that official announcement. But anyway.
And like for the Lando miniseries, I agree that like the stuff he did with Lando and Lobot's relationship is great. But with the two alien clones who are like in love with each other, like Pavel and Alexin, like because they're clones and possibly clones of the same template, it's like there's this vaguely incestuous thing about them that like nobody on like Star Wars comics groups like talk about. I don't know if that's like something we're just like collectively trying not to acknowledge, but like that is something that like I didn't really like about the miniseries. But other than that, like Charles Soule has done like really great things with Star Wars comics.
Oh yeah, so it was nice seeing him on that list when they first revealed High Republic. I saw, okay, I feel like rest assured they're gonna treat this era with respect and break new territory, which they did. They certainly did in this book, and that's just one small piece of what we're gonna get in this entire new era of Star Wars, which could go for several years. We don't have a timetable on how many books or how many comics or what mediums it's going to be in. They showed us just the first couple things, which is right now we have Light of the Jedi, we have Test of Courage, and a little bit we're going to get the Into the Dark by Claudia Gray. And like I said, we have the Marvel comics written by Kevin Scott and Dana Jose Older, who is writing the Yoda story. Justina Ireland is writing a Test of Courage too. So there you have it. There's 5 authors going to build this brand new era of Star Wars, and it's going to be fun and also really insightful. And the cool thing is, no matter what kind of Star Wars fan you are, there's going to be something for you to read and something for you to get. So, you know, if you have some younglings at home, they can feel, you know, great reading that Test of Courage book. Justine Ireland has been around for doing a lot of the all ages books, and she's done a great job of doing that. Same thing could be said with the adventure comics. They've been doing Star Wars Adventures comics, which teach kids great morals and great thematics, themes that go throughout Star Wars and relate to real life. So there you go. And then you got the adult novels. So there's something for everybody here, which I really like.
Right. And I guess with that, we'll go ahead and dive into this novel, Light of the Jedi, and kind of go through like our thoughts on it. Like we'll go like vaguely in the order of the plot, but we'll probably like go on tangents and mention things, go back and forth and whatever. But so we got this opening chapter with like the legacy run, and it's like a really like they're in like a hyperspace lane, and it feels like a very mundane day. And like what's the captain's name? Her name is Hedda Cassette, and like there's also like someone who works there named Jerry Bowman, and you also have like families and kids on this vessel. And you know, like right there, it just like raises the stakes knowing that there are families on these things. It kind of makes you like think about like how like in Star Trek sometimes they have families on like something like the Enterprise, and in my head I'm thinking it's probably not a good idea, you know.
Yeah, that was a really great opening chapter because, like you said, they set the stakes by having innocents on board this ship, and it's a great way to open up a new era in Star Wars because, as we know, the Sith don't exist, according to the Jedi at this time. They're not out there anymore. They think they've vanquished them all. It's peace. So we're getting that inside the mundane, mediocre kind of life of what it is for these people to be just going from place to place. Okay, you know, we're going to just spend some time walking around the ship as the captain, taking a tour, talking to some people, yada, yada, yada. And then all hell breaks loose. And it's like, okay, that's the kind of chapter you want to have to open up to something where all of a sudden everything we know about hyperspace is, you know, switched on top of its head because we know as hyperspace is supposed to be blue. Why the heck is it red right now? And how the heck are there objects in the hyperspace lane? That should not be happening. So to see it quickly change, like it's like a huge change in the story, like instantly where like, oh man, there's a lot of danger and there's going to be a lot of repercussions for what happens when this ship just like blows apart into like a million fragments that like get spread across the galaxy, and it just start causing chaos for everybody that's just going about their normal day.
It feels very real, like the fear that Cassette feels, and like she's thinking about like Surge and the kids and like wondering like how they are, but like she dies and never finds out. And so for a good portion of this book, we're kind of wondering like what happened with Surge and some of the kids, and like whether it's possible that they may have survived, like as the ship is like broken up by this collision. Yeah.
So then you get into the beginning of the story, and you know, we're training with a couple of the Jedi. We got Jedi Master Loden Greatstorm, great name by the way. This awesome Twi'lek Jedi. he's a good teacher, strong, wise. He's got a good sense of humor as well, which is always great in Star Wars. You got to have that person that's always making us laugh at certain points. He's always trying to better those around him, especially as his Padawans. He's that guy that just has a lot of pride in what he can do. He's been a Jedi for a number of years, so he's on Coruscant. He's training with his buddy Briaga Agaberry, who's a Wookiee Jedi. He's very sensitive, very very force sensitive. He has special abilities. If you know Quinlan Voss or Cal Kestis, they have this ability where they can touch objects, and those objects like kind of tell them like a story of the past.
Psychometry.
There we go. So yeah, thanks for pulling that out there, because Star Wars is so vast with the lore. It's hard to come up with things sometimes as far as pulling it out of my brain. And then you also have this other Jedi, and his name is Jedi Stellan Gios. So it's the three of them. They're at the Jedi Temple, which is pretty cool to see. Back then, 200 years ago, I mean, honestly, not much has changed. It's still got those pinnacles and everything, but it's just mainly the way that people look. The Jedi look, their robes are a little bit different. Like you could tell right away, okay, this is not the prequel trilogy at the fall of the Republic. These guys are wearing these bright gold and they're inlaced with like a light color that just shows that they are in like, it reminds me of like the Greeks. Like, okay, they're in this time of wealth and power, and they can have really nice clothes along with it. So they're just conversing, and then they hear about this message. Why they don't even hear about it. It's actually one of those Obi-Wan Kenobi moments where they just feel like all these screams like through the Force, and those three characters like simultaneously like fall to the ground. Like it's just like this incomprehensible feeling of force where they just can't take it through their minds. They kind of fall down and have to brace themselves and say something's wrong. Like there's been peace in this galaxy, and all of a sudden they're feeling this temptation of, they're not quite sure what it is. It's not like the dark side or anything, but it just seems like there was a lot of strife and a lot of unsureness, which is what frankly scares the Jedi the most, is being unsure, having that status quo knocked off what it's used to be. They've been so set in their ways that they are not really prepared as they should be for a situation like this. So they immediately start like investigating. So they find out that there was this ship that was in the prologue. What was the ship's name again?
The Legacy Run.
The Legacy Run. There we go.
Yeah, like Jedi Master Avar Chris like runs up to them and is like, "Did you feel that too?" And it kind of reminds me of when people feel an earthquake, but obviously it's like galaxy wide in this instance, so it's super intense, like how they're feeling it telepathically, you know?
Yeah. So they find out that this ship has gone missing. It wasn't where it's supposed to land. They were supposed to land at this port. The ship never appeared there. Suddenly you have ricocheting pieces of this ship like exiting hyperspace throughout the galaxy. And these big chunks of metal are like hitting space stations. They're hitting, and they're coming out of the velocity so quickly that whatever they come into contact with, it just causes massive damage. So you got these reverberations of the galaxy where people are just dying left and right, and they can't even like try to prevent it because these fragments are just out of control. They're actually like going out of space into real space, and then they actually like jump back into hyperspace. It's like an endless sort of like a tsunami of just ricocheting material just because it's hypercharged from hyperspace, and no one can quite understand what they're dealing with. So that's the gist of the story, is they have to figure out how the heck to stop everything going on the way it is.
Yeah, because these pieces are flying at like varying speeds. So like some of them they're able to predict, but some are like too fast. And there's even mention of like this desert planet that used to be part jungle, but then like one of these pieces hit it and like wiped out the jungle, and like I guess these like dinosaur and dragon like creatures on it. And I think it's implied to be Tatooine, but they probably haven't like decided whether or not to confirm it outright just yet. Like I think they're waiting to see like what the fan reaction is, of whether the fans think it's like too silly or whatnot.
Yeah, because if you look, or it's a book, so you can't look, but But if you read between the lines, it even sounds like there's like dewbacks on that planet because, like you said, they have like more like reptilian dinosaur-esque creatures. So you have them, and there could have even been like a crate dragon creature. I'm thinking that when they said the dragon, it instantly like, okay, they're talking about a crate dragon.
Right.
And crate dragons, to my knowledge, from anything in Legends, were never on any other planet than Tatooine.
They're trying to figure out like how to evacuate people off of certain planets that are like in the path of some of these pieces that are like going to collide with them. And of course, like Coruscant is one of the places in its path. And like we know that nothing drastic can happen to Coruscant, but you got to have like that part where like the Republic is like responding to the disaster and trying to like deflect the oncoming storm. I also thought it was a nice touch that like the Coruscant of this era has like an area that still has mountains, which I think were mentioned in Heir to the Empire. So it's cool having that little reference.
Yeah, they're actually referenced in canon as well in the Rogue One Catalyst prequel. There's a lab that Galen Erso is working at, under Krennic when he's still working with the Empire, and they have him in this like nice abode, and he could actually see like sort of like a mountain-ish area, like very small. It's like it's almost like a park. But it was mentioned that like before there was like mountains there.
Yeah, it's been forever since I've read that one. So, of course, like the Jedi are like taken aboard a ship, and like the people in the Senate are like thinking that maybe the Jedi can like use the force push the fragments away, but it's like not that simple really. But the Jedi still want to be on the mission so they can see what they can do.
Yeah, so what it is you have teams of Jedi that are going to these hotspots that, like you said, they're able to predict some of these fragments where they're supposed to go. So you have the team of all the Jedi that were mentioned, right? You have Avar Kress, you have Loden, you have Buriaga, Agaberry, and you have Selengios. And they are all in the same ship. They're going from planet to planet. And one of their paths predicts them to go to Dathomir. Yeah, if you guys have watched the Clone Wars, if you've played through Jedi Fallen Order, you're going to be very familiar with Dathomir. Dathomir, at this point in time, it's got a lot more life on the planet. As you remember seeing in Jedi Fallen Order, there's like a lot of cool architecture that looked ancient. So now we're actually able to see this culture. So they land on Dathomir, which has not really ever seen Jedi before. But we do have the Night Sisters there, and it's interesting because the Jedi this is before the cataclysmic event happens with all the shards heading to Dathomir. They have a couple days to plan. So what it is they're trying to do is they're just checking out Dathomir, and they discover that the Night Sisters there, or the Dathomirian witches, the Night Sisters are actually an exact clan. So they're talking about the Knights, the clans in general. And they find out, oh man, these people actually use dark magic, which is almost like another form of the Force. So it's really interesting because they have this conversation, the Jedi and the witches of Dathomir, about how they use the Force and what they call the Force and what they call as magic. And they decide they let the witches in on what's going to happen. So they actually join forces with the witches to kind of come up with a plan for how they're going to disperse this wreckage before it actually gets to them to harm the planet.
Yeah, and Loden Greatstorm, like, I really love his sense of humor when he's like they do like this serious speech. It's kind of like what Qui-Gon tells Boss Nass, what happens to one will happen to the other or whatever. And then Loden Greatstorm says, so, which side are you on? And it's like this really corny pun that he does. And it's like, okay, sure, why not?
It was one of those moments where I just had to nod my head, like as I'm reading it, like, oh, I see what you did there.
Yeah, it kind of felt to me like a throwback to Jason Solo's puns in the Young Jedi Knight series. Or I don't know if they were puns, but they were like corny jokes.
So what happens is they have to spend a night, and rather than spend a night on their ship, the Jedi are welcomed by the Witches of Dathomir to go to their village. So as they're at the village, like they just have this weird part of the story, which I thought was odd that they included it, where it just talks about how they have to do their laundry as the Jedi. It's like they're kind of like
Yeah.
whenever they're out on journeys, like they can't just give it to the people of the Jedi Order. Like they have a whole like section of workers for the Jedi Order on the Jedi Temple that do their laundry for them. So a couple of the Jedi, especially Geos, Cell and Geos, were a little bit mad when they were like, okay, like being on this dusty planet, I can't be looking like I've been here for years. I gotta wash this thing. So they're a little bit perturbed by having to deal with the climate and having to maintain the pristine kind of order that the High Republic that the Republic expect the Jedi to look like at all times.
Yeah, and the Night Sisters even have a sense of humor because, like, they simply watch the Jedi do their laundry until they're finished with it, and then the Night Sisters get their laundry and just use their own magic to clean their own clothes, like within a minute.
And then it's like, oh, how can I learn how to do that? You know?
Yeah, dude, that would be like so convenient if we had that in like real life.
So they're also sitting around the table there, and they have another conversation about this tale that they have about the Wolfman, and the Wolfman is basically a Shistavarian. You know, the guys from the Cantina and Maz Eisley.
Shistavainen or something.
Shistavainen, something like that. And
yeah,
about
Wolfman.
how this
Wolfman,
they had on Dathomir, and they have a red moon on Dathomir, and like once every month the Shistavarian would come out and it would terrorize the local village and take one of the children, and they were spinning this tale, and it was so, all the Jedi were just so engrossed in this like spooky tale. And yeah, that was one way to pass the time. And basically, they found out that the Shistavanian never actually was doing this for bad intentions. He was taking these kids to basically show them the ways of the Force. He was taking Force sensitive children. He wasn't a Jedi though. He was just a Force user, and he was helping them kind of realize their potential. So it's then that they find out that this Shistavanian is actually still on the planet. He's actually still there. And the Jedi realize this and say, okay, we got to find this guy because he might actually have some kind of clue about what we're dealing with here. Because these children were actually some of the children from the ship that actually crashed, the Legacy Run. These were children that were brought down. They somehow survived.
Yeah, because like during the story, Avar Chris had a vision of like that collision and like the children that were on there, and so like the implication is that they're probably there, and so they go on this quest to find that Shistavanian Force user, and his lair is like pretty wild. Like it's like this cavern within a mountain, but there's like a lot of like plant life within it and lots of vines, and like it's described as like being very colorful but somehow malevolent looking because of like the shades of purple or whatever. I don't know. It was like a weird purple prose moment from Charles Soule there, but I dug it.
Yeah, it was cool because, you know, in Star Wars, we're used to having one kind of ecosystem on an entire planet, be it desert, forest,
yeah,
you know, any of that, swamp. So it was neat to like be transported from this arid wasteland, just red dust planet, sort of like Mars almost looking. Then you go into like this verdant cave that just glows with life. And immediately the Jedi felt the presence of like more life in this area, and we're like, they got this moment of hope. They got this moment of hope that kind of washed over each one of them. Like, this might be the key. We might have been led on to what could actually happen to save what's left of the galaxy here from this terrible, terrible problem. So yeah, they find the Shistavanian, they find the children, kind of like deep in meditation, and they just kind of are sitting there, not disturbing them until the Shistavanian, he stands up and he kind of goes, "Oh, you're finally here." So this whole time, the Shistavanian knew that the Jedi were actually going to come. He had a vision as well. So here, he's gotten inside information from these kids. And these kids basically are telling them that what they experience, they're able to translate through the Force into like a solution. And that would incorporate something that could be incorporated into a ship that would travel the galaxy to kind of create like this mechanism to, I guess, kind of like absorb the wreckage somehow. And so that's basically the next part of the book, was them trying to come up with a ship that would be able to do that kind of thing. So it kind of goes into like a long montage of them going throughout Dathomir, trying to find wreckage of other ships that have crashed in the past and scrapping their own ship as well to kind of make this huge freighter ship. And then what did they call that ship, Steven?
They called it the Light Switch.
That they did. I thought that was a pretty ingenious plan, because like hyperspace, for some reason, it seemed like they turned a switch and it turned to be red instead of blue. So I thought it was kind of thematic how it was like called the Light Switch. You think of the High Republic and the Jedi as the light. So now they're going to travel around the galaxy. They got this ship to work. They got it functioning. But first they had to test it. And it was just about another hour. They finished this thing just in time, because that's when they predicted the wreckage would come out of hyperspace and strike Dathomir. So as they're gliding around in orbit, did you like how they actually canceled out this wreckage?
So it was kind of confusing, but my understanding was that like they had to like make sure that the ship was spinning, and they even like thrown like a callback to Phantom Menace when like someone's like, "Try spinning, that's a good trick," and then like, because like they have to do that in order for this thing to work, and it like cancels wreckage from like landing or crashing through the atmosphere and onto the ground.
Yeah, so it was a great success. I thought it was pretty ingenious how they're able to incorporate the kids that they brought in from the prologue and brought them back like almost halfway through the book, like, oh, they were the plan. So then you have this ragtag group of Jedi. You have these like Force-sensitive kids that kind of reminded me of from the Thrawn books, females called Skywalkers that help them travel through hyperspace. So I was very much getting like vibes of the Skywalkers. Would you say the same thing as well?
Yeah, from like the new Thrawn books, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because when he said Thrawn books, I thought like the original Thrawn trilogy, and then I was like, no, wait, those Skywalkers are mentioned in like the more recent ones.
Because basically how it worked was these kids, since they already had a connection with that ship, the Legacy Run, they had a connection through the Force with the wreckage that was actually going throughout space. So that's how they're able to really pinpoint exactly where it would come out of space. Because with the predictions that the Jedi had made about where their trajectory go from the initial point, they could use the Jedi younglings or the Force-sensitive younglings to be able to pinpoint that. And so there you go. Like, you speed up time. They're going from place to place, and it's working. Like, it's insane how they're able to save the galaxy.
It's working.
Yeah, you have that sort of thing going on. So then they actually go to the forest moon of Endor. And it was a trip. I cannot believe out of all the places they go, they ended up at the forest moon of Endor. And there you go. Of course, they're not going to go to Endor and not without seeing Ewoks. So, of course, the Ewoks have already been primitive since Return of the Jedi. So there really wasn't much change in there, and they were really the same with the way they described it for the most part.
Yeah, when it mentions when they looked at the Ewoks, they mentioned how it seemed like for a long time that the Ewoks were not blinking. So that was like a pretty meta reference to like, the changes of like the Ewoks can blink now. And like, I don't know if you noticed this, but the Ewoks in The Rise of Skywalker didn't blink for the few seconds they were on.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought to watch that again now.
Like, it's only like 2 seconds, but I like checked recently and I was like, oh, they didn't blink. JJ, you madman.
So yeah, they go to Endor and they make friends with a bunch of Ewoks. Of course they're gonna have Ewoks because Justina Ireland, I'm pretty sure, is an Ewok lover, and she has something to do with High Republic. So yeah, they're gonna be in there. But
yeah, I'm sure she like whispered into Charles Soule's ear and was like, "Hey, can you put Ewoks in this?"
Yeah. So the whole time, the mystery is, right. Okay, we had the ship that got destroyed. We're like a little bit more than halfway through the book at this point.
Yeah.
It's now going to turn into
a real page turner.
Yeah, it's now going to turn into like a mystery. It's like, okay, we pretty much have saved the people we could. There's still like probably hundreds of thousands, unfortunately, of casualties throughout the galaxy. The galaxy is still very large at this point, but having a couple 100,000 people dying like almost instantly is a huge blow to like the galaxy as a whole. So now the Jedi are just trying to figure out what's going on. So anyway, this is what led them to Endor. They had a tip that there was some weird stuff happening on Endor, and there was rumors about a kind of like a space Viking cult of people called the Nile, and they're a ragtag group of people that are basically like nomads. They're made up of any kind of species throughout the galaxy. I think they mentioned a Twi'lek, as well as the Ahsoka species, Togruta, and I think there was a Gran as well. That was just a couple of them.
Yeah, I really appreciated how, like, the Yuuzhan Vong were a thing and people really loved them, but I appreciated how in this instance, like, the villains were not just one species. Like, it was like a group of people of different species, but they're like under this name called the Nile, which is a pretty cool name. And if you look at their like costume designs online, they look really cool. They're described as like space Vikings. They look very menacing, and they even sound menacing based on like the stories that they hear about these people and how they slayed like that really tall monster thing that's on Endor. You know the one I'm talking about?
Oh, that thing that gave me nightmares as a kid? Yeah, that thing. I used to love watching those Ewok adventures, but man, did I get the living daylights scared out of me with watching that thing. Even actually, in a funny connection, is Kevan Scott. He does these Tales from Vader's Castle, and he actually did a story about that very creature that you're referring to with the Ewoks, which is still a little bit unsettling, even though it was in a younger comic kid thing for kids. So I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I read that miniseries, and I think for like some of those issues, I was feeling pretty meh about them, and then for some reason, the Ewok one ended up being my favorite of that miniseries by far, which is kind of funny. There's this really funny Ewok video. It's on YouTube. I'll send it to you later, and I'll put it in the show notes. It's called ThePruld Ewok. It's like bracket ThePruld outside bracket and then Ewok. It's surreal and it's funny, but yeah.
Nice. I do want to touch upon their voice, because all these Nile, they all have like, I don't know, vocabulator things on their faces, or they look like some kind of like breathing apparatuses. So yeah, all their voices are modulated. And at least in this book, this book is the first of many. They're not going to give us the answers to every single question we have. It's good to always have some kind of thing to get teased about, but it's like we don't know why they're wearing these things on their faces. What is the purpose, because they almost look like cyborgs, but like you said, I really dig the costumes because they remind me kind of like Mad Max. Like there's really crude, very used pieces of armor that looks like they've been through enough battles that they shouldn't even be worn anymore. That type of thing.
Yeah, and it's very surprising that they didn't get introduced until like halfway through this book. But if you're like setting them up as like the main villains of this High Republic publishing project, it makes sense that they would like wait a bit and just pace it out and not throw too much too soon,
Yeah.
And yeah, like it just made sense. And like how they're responsible for like the collision that happened, and it's like, oh snap, these people are really threatening.
Yeah. So it was mentioned before the book even came out that, they were going to do something. They had something to do when it came to hyperspace anomalies. They somehow have this technology. So that's what got tripped, right? When they went to Endor, they got called to Endor because there was some kind of weird hyperspace abnormality over there by the forest moon of Endor. So it's kind of cool how like Star Wars in a way kind of like ended from a certain point of view, like at the Battle of Endor, and here we're starting like a whole new Star Wars story at the moon of Endor. So I thought it was kind of like
it's like
a
the
pattern.
beginnings.
Like it's coming back around full circle. We're starting Star Wars, at least this far back at Endor. So that's what
it's like poetry. They run.
There it is, and that's how Star Wars always has been. You got the rhythm there. So that was neat. What did you think about the confrontation between our Jedi heroes and the Nihil?
Well, I mean, they did the obvious thing of like having Buriyaga, the Wookiee Jedi, using the lightsaber to slice the arms off of one of them. Like that old like Wookiees can tear arms out sort of thing. But like even though like the Nihil aren't like force sensitive, they have like these devices that they don't cancel out the force, but they emit this like it's like this sonic signal type of thing that blows people back, kind of like a cannon sort of thing. So that gives them like the upper hand in this confrontation. And Stellan Gios like gets hit with it really badly and like gets all scratched up. And so like Avar Kriss is like telling the other Jedi that they should fall back and like retreat, like telling everyone to retreat so that they can like heal everyone. Cause Avar Kriss cares about the safety of everyone, and like later on the other Jedi are kind of upset that they didn't like go forward, but Chris has like this philosophical debate and like is saying like it felt like the right thing at the time to fall back just so we could recover, so we'll be stronger much later and face them when we feel more ready.
Yeah, I thought it was great seeing that. Was like you said, it's a real page turner, this book. And it's crazy to me that we got our first like lightsaber kind of like action sequence like more than halfway through the book. But it was, I think Charles Soule does a great job of writing action. I really do, because you have each one of the Jedi with like their own unique kind of fighting style. Like they have their own forms that they take of the Jedi, and the forms escape me because they're actually different forms than they were during like the prequel trilogy.
I used to have these remembered, but now I don't.
But
I think Shi Cho is one of them.
Yes. And Ataru, I think, is another one.
Yeah.
But
like a video game console sounding thing.
But it was neat because we're so used to seeing the Jedi fight other force wielding people with lightsabers, but to see these people, the Nihil, with a way to defend against the Jedi, kind of brought me back to like the good old Mandalorians and how the Mandalorians, developed their armor and their weaponry to combat Jedi because they didn't have the upper hand with force powers. They had to create their own sort of force power-esque weaponry, and that's what we see here from the Nihil. So I thought that was pretty neat, and it definitely set the bar high. Like, oh crap, like the Jedi, they got their butt kicked by people that don't even use the force. Like, what the heck is going on here?
Right. So after this confrontation, the Jedi return to Coruscant, and like the kids are taken somewhere where they can be safe. And so they talk to the council about what happened, and I really love that we got to see more of Yaddle in this, and we even get like a mention of Yaddle's backstory. Like in Legends, I think Yaddle was like trapped in like a cavern or somewhere, like held captive for years, like ever since she was a Padawan, and then like she became like really enlightened and one with the Force, like in spirit, that like when she was finally freed, the council decided to make her a master. So I think something similar happened to her in canon, but just in an earlier time period this time. So I thought that was a really nice touch, and like she's like really wise and giving them advice. And they do like this meditation thing to figure out where the next planet is that they need to go. And it ends up being the planet Sub-Terrell.
That was mentioned in Attack of the Clones.
Yeah, it was.
Good old Dexter Jetster.
Yeah, like we find out that Dexter is older than I guess we thought he was. Like he's a prospector on there when they arrive there, and they like have to save him from the Nile, and it's
man,
a really fun cameo.
That was so cool. So it was really cool to see a Basilisk, the species. We weren't ever really sure of how long they live. We're not sure of any species in Star Wars or lifespan, really, other than humans, I guess, for the most part, right? So it was nice seeing a connection to another Star Wars timeline film, in that case, the Attack of the Clones. So, Yaddle's there. We got good old Dexter Jetster there. So it was like, okay, I'm sold. Like, they didn't beat us over the head with his cameo. It was just like he was one of the side characters that they saved. And he imparted his wisdom. And then he was on his way again.
Yeah, he said something about maybe I should go into food service, and we all know how that goes. So it's just a little wink and nod. And sometimes cameos in Star Wars can feel too over the top, but since they did it with slightly more obscure characters like Yaddle and Dexter, like I was fine with it here.
Mm-hmm. Definitely something that was unexpected, but it was definitely a welcome one. Let's get into like the end of the book here. So we're building up to something here. We see they've saved the galaxy from all the wreckage. They've come down to the mystery that they're pretty sure the Nile are the ones behind it. So now they're regrouped. They're well rested on Coruscant, and they're going to send a Jedi strike force out against one of these outposts that they know that there could be some Nile. So that is what we're building up to. The tension's high, and we have one last scene with some downtime between the Jedi and the younglings, and this is like the last meeting of the younglings. It's like the night before they go away, the Jedi, and there's a returning species, not character, but a pet or a beast creature, I guess you could say, from Star Wars Legends. But we get some Gizka running around. If you're not familiar, they're these little things from Knights of the Old Republic. The kids are being occupied because they have gone down to level 1313, and they brought back with them the Gizka, which are pretty much like pests of the Star Wars galaxies. So they're playing around with them, and it's just like one of those like cameos that if you've played Knights of the Republic, you're gonna get it, because at one point one of the kids actually kicks the Gizka, and this whole scene is like, it's not really necessary, but it's just like something that like lightens the mood, it's the light of the Jedi, right? Yeah, it can't be just dark gloom and death and destruction all over the place. So the Jedi say their goodbyes, and they get on with it, and Bur-Yaga's like, don't worry, we're gonna be back before Life Day. So I was like, oh man, they just, even in this era of Star Wars, they had to put that in there. Yeah, it's so cheesy, but I love it. So it's really interesting because like other High Republic stories take place like around the same time as this particular story, like dealing with the Great Disaster. But like even when they've cleaned up after that, it's like the Nile are still out there, and they can cause more collisions and cause more disasters. So like they really like threw out lots of possibilities for future High Republic stories, Oh yeah, definitely. It's something that it's gonna lead up to a lot more. So definitely fun there. But yeah, so they're getting down to it. The outpost. What Jedi were there? There were quite a few, and some of them I don't even think we had been formally introduced to before. So they're a familiar species, but they were definitely characters we haven't seen. So like there was a Doug Jedi. Yeah, that was awesome, because never before have we ever even seen that in Legends, I'm pretty sure. And it was really funny because on the transport over to this outpost where the Nile were, there's a lot of downtime I've been noticing in this book. The more I talk about it, like it's like big action sequence, big plot moment, then we have some downtime. So there's some downtime on the transport. There's like some sequences at Starlight Beacon and whatnot. Yeah, like it goes like it does a pretty good job of doing like high tension stuff and then downtime. I think it's a good flow. I think it's got good pacing. Yeah. So the Doug character, his name is Djarin. and he's got this grand pod racer action figure, and the other Jedi
Yeah.
are looking at him. They're like, "Aren't you a little old to have this action figure?" And he's like, "Well, this is the other species that lives on my home planet called Malastare, and pod racing is a brand new sport that just started up." And he's like, "I got money in this race. Some of my family are actually involved, and this is one of the heroes of the pod racing circuit. Is this grand? So I hold him in respect as kind of like a totem, if you will, that gives me good luck before I go into battle." So it's like we have the Star Wars equivalent of like a Black Series totem figures in a Jedi Order, and the Jedi are not really supposed to have personal items like this, but some of them just like to hold on to their past, even though they're supposed to forget it as they train as younglings.
Like, there are some really neat prequel connections. Some of them are kind of goofy. Like, we even get this, like, cameo appearance from Marfalump from the episode 1 Pepsi commercial. I don't know if you remember that.
I don't even know this thing.
Yeah, like, there's, like, a scene where they're just walking through, like, Coruscant in, like, some food court type of place, and they mention that, like, Marfalump is drinking, like, some beverage. I guess it's supposed to be, like, the Star Wars equivalent of Pepsi, and he just notices a Jedi and is like, "Long live the Jedi," and it's just, like, a little cameo. It's kind of goofy, but I kind of love it.
Yeah, so now with all of that out of the way, we get into the climax of this entire book. And obviously, like, this is the first book of the series, so there wasn't like, oh my gosh, we killed the main boss, but they did actually have this epic battle, and they had more weapons than the ones you were talking about. So they had the sonic blaster type of things, but the Jedi were not prepared again because they had even more surprises up their sleeve.
Yeah, they had, like, this like spear looking thing, but it has like a crystal at the end of it. So I guess the Nile used magic as well, which is pretty trippy to think about. It's like a great storm is like magic again. Oh boy. And it's just one of those like funny moments that you imagine, like, if it were a sitcom, the studio audience would be laughing.
Yeah, because we get that callback to the Witches of Dathomir and how they were comparing the Force to the magic. So
yeah,
I think it's quite cool because when they were pitching this story, when they first revealed it, the Jedi of the High Republic are like the Knights of the Round Table. They even their design, their clothing, they have like lightsaber holsters. Like their lightsabers even have like, I don't even know, like those like little guards on them that make them look like Knights of the Round Table, like swords, like the broadswords.
yeah.
So it kind of like brought back that kind of feel of like this is during like medieval times. You have these sorcerers, you have these Knights of the Round Table going at it. It was interesting. Like, we haven't really seen any battles quite like that. At one point, they're fighting. The outpost, by the way, is actually in orbit of one of the planets of the solar system, and somebody turned off the gravity in the station. So you have this crazy sequence where like the Jedi don't know which direction is up or down, and somehow
It's like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
and the Nile have like these like magnetic boots, so they're able to actually have an advantage over the Jedi because the Jedi are like floundering around. They're caught off guard, and the Nile are just once again they're ahead of the Jedi. Who would have thought that these non-force sensitive people are above the Jedi, even though they do have the magic, which is something they did not reveal back on Endor.
I got like Dark Crystal vibes reading about like their weapons that like used crystals that like shot lasers and whatever. It was just such a fun thing to imagine.
Yeah, so what did you think about the resolution of this battle?
So I thought it was, since these are like new Jedi characters we're not familiar with, it felt like there was a chance that one of them could die. And you do get that moment when like one of the lasers shoots through like Buryaga, and you can like hear like the sad growl as you read it. But thankfully, like they're able to like heal Buryaga later on after this, and it's like It's one of those hollow victory type of things because it's like, yeah, they made it out and they captured some of the Nile, but some escaped, and so it's like they're not fully defeated, and so they say they're gonna like interrogate some of the Nile members and see what more they can find out. So like I don't know if that's gonna be in like some sequel that Soule might write, or if it'll be in like some other High Republic project. But I thought it was like a really nice setup for what's to come. Like we knew this would be like the beginning of something, and I did kind of expect it to feel standalone-ish, but it turned out that it felt kind of cliffhanger-y, which I was okay with because like this is the beginning of a new era, and I feel like it earned that sort of cliffhanger-y feel, if that makes sense.
Oh, it definitely makes sense. I agree wholeheartedly with you about they had to leave it on tension a little bit. I mean, you got to entice the readers to continue on with the High Republic. Like, you're not going to just read this book and just put it down and never read another High Republic book. Like, this is not something we're going to see in movies. It's not going to be something we're going to see in TV series. Reading is and experiencing it through the comics right now is the only way. And there's plenty of other great stories. And the fact that we get just the tip of the iceberg of what the Nile are capable of. I like how their progression from when we first meet them, like a little bit more than halfway to the story, and we see them at the end, and it was just like, oh my gosh, they just completely hid this magic use, and it's gonna be something that's just we've seen what they're capable of. These masterminds. I mean, are they really the orchestrators behind the great disaster, or do they have masters themselves? I mean, we see like that epilogue piece where it's just like there's this dark figure, and we're not really sure who it is because they don't really elaborate. But this person was just like, great job on disrupting the Jedi. We are just one step closer to claiming the galaxy for what we want out of it. You know, they're like the Vikings. They just pillage and burn along the way and take what they want. That's basically the idea of denial. They don't like to have this kind of order that has been just around for too long for them.
Yeah, it feels very much like that Gallius Rax moment at the end of the first Aftermath book where we don't know like who he is, and like at the time some people thought, oh, is this Thrawn, is this Snoke, and then turned out to be just Gallius Rax, which was kind of disappointing to me, but it's like whatever to me now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it feels like this could possibly be a Sith character. Like that would be an obvious route to take, you know, a Sith pulling the strings, and we don't know like what species they are, so like they could be anything as far as we know for now. But do you think they could actually introduce like a person who's not a Sith but is pulling the strings, like some sort of different motivation?
Oh yeah, certainly. I as much as I like the Sith, I'm open for different kind of ideas of masterminds. I mean, we mentioned earlier Thrawn. I think he's a great villain that, you know, we can actually kind of sympathize with. Those villains where you sympathize with them, they actually are very interesting when you can understand what they're going through, why they're doing it, and they're not force sensitive, which is just they're using their mind to get what they want without having to apply force and being able to influence others to do it for them. So as much as I'd like to see the Sith, and I think we're going to have to see the Sith eventually, even if it's their own book or if they're mentioned in a comic or something. I would like to see some other type of occurrence of a figure of prominence in the High Republic here.
Yeah, I thought it was a very Star Wars ending, like leaving us on a note of uncertainty in a book like this. But yeah, like overall, this book had like a lot to introduce, like, and brought in familiar and unfamiliar things. So I thought that was cool.
Like you said, it was a good balance of everything. It's there to welcome fans of any kind of era of Star Wars, whether you're a prequel fan. You know, they had the prequel references. Whether you're, you know, an original trilogy fan, they had references, well, obviously on Endor with the Ewoks and everything. So it really did a good job of just making it feel like Star Wars, but at the same time making it feel like it's a whole new part of Star Wars you haven't actually experienced yet.
Right. And like who knows like what else Charles Soule can do after this. Like we know he's been wanting to do like a Palpatine story for a while. Like I don't know, maybe he'll do that someday, like after the High Republic or whatever.
Yeah.
So I guess we can go into like final thoughts on Light of the Jedi and score out of 10.
Okay, so Light of the Jedi, as I mentioned off the top, very, very big moment for Star Wars. Like it's huge. This is the first time we're really exploring stuff outside of what we know already with Star Wars. But I think what was great with the High Republic, Light of the Jedi, is Charles Soule, like I said, managed to make some things that we're familiar with show up in the book while developing new lore in Star Wars. Such new lore, which it's just so cool hearing these new names of ships, stuff that isn't X-Wings or Star Destroyers, hearing those names, hearing familiar things like the Kuat drive yards and stuff like that. Like, there's same ship manufacturers are still around making different kind of ships back then. And same thing with like just the locations, obviously Dathomir, Endor, Coruscant, while giving us like a newer part of the galaxy that we haven't seen before, a lot of Outer Rim, pioneering, stuff like that. But it was really neat to just know more about these new characters. Now, this book really solely focused on the Jedi. I'm hoping that in the later books they give us more characters that are like bounty hunters or smugglers, or businessmen like Lando. Like they've already said that's going to happen, but people want to see Jedi if they're learning about
just
something like
diner owners.
Oh yeah, that was one of the best parts of the book. Yeah, Dexter Jester. Gotta love how somebody pulled that in there. I want to know whose idea that was, because thank you for putting him in there. But overall, I gotta give it a 9 out of 10 because it, like we said earlier, it had great pacing, gave us great character moments, gave us those quieter moments that helped define the characters and helped develop the characters, gave us brand new adversaries to Star Wars that are something different. Like you said, they're not all the same species. They're a mixture of species that we know. They're menacing. We're not quite sure what exactly their plan is yet, but we have an understanding of how they're doing it. And I just want to know more. And I think that's what this story does great too, is it leaves us off where if you read the story and you don't read another one, you're going to feel pretty much satisfied. But if you are invested in a High Republic, this is the first jumping off point for you. And it leaves me, at least, with more assurance that they're going to really hit this one out of the park. And I can't wait for more. So yeah, the High Republic, definitely a success for Light of the Jedi. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to diving into more.
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement with you once again on the score, like we were on the Milan episode. But yeah, I think I'm gonna give this a 9 out of 10 as well. Like, I don't think it has surpassed Dark Disciple, which has been my favorite canon novel, which is kind of weird to say like 5 years later after so many novels.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this was a great start. There were some familiar things, maybe a little too much familiar things like Endor and whatnot, but it was harmless and it was fun. There was some good humor, some intense moments as well. I felt like there was a strong balance. There is room for improvement, but that's fine because like this is the start and it started with a bang and it's ushering in a new era of Star Wars that we haven't seen before. So I'm really excited to see what more we get out of the High Republic era.
Definitely.
All right. Well, thanks again for joining me. Where can people find your stuff?
Oh, yeah, it was a pleasure, Stephen. Thanks for having me on yet again. Yeah, I had a great time reviewing Mulan with you, and here we go again, reviewing a book this time. So I know that's not something you do on your channel often. You're mainly
book club.
But yeah, it looks like you got yourself a little book club started up. But yeah, so primarily you can find me talking about more High Republic on youtube.com/Starrapter. I have an entire playlist of the High Republic videos pertaining to different news and just thoughts on High Republic. So you can find me talking about the High Republic, general Star Wars, and I've been seeing a couple of movies recently, Tenet, X-Men, the New Mutants and stuff like that. So I have reviews a lot on the channel as well. You can find me on Twitter. That's where I'm doing most of the talking. So same thing at Starrapter, and I have Facebook as well. But yeah, it's been great conversation. Fun times as always, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, go ahead and check those videos out at the Starrapter channel. And as for my plugs, you can find me at Steven Schinder on Twitter and Instagram, Steven Schinder Storytelling on Facebook. I have a fantasy horror comedy novel called Lemons Look Like Rain, which is available on Amazon, and you can find more info on that at stevenschinder.com. And I've also been writing and editing some articles for Culture Slate, an entertainment news site. They are at Culture Slate, pretty much everywhere, and I'll include links to everything in the show notes, of course. And, yeah, no emails this time, but if you ever want to email, just email delayedreplaypodcast@gmail.com and let the podcast know what you think of our coverage and whatnot. Tell me how bad this podcast is, even. It'd be really funny. So, yeah. Who's been your favorite guest on this podcast? There can only be one. No, you can have multiple favorites. Like, every guest I've had on here brings something different and unique, and it's really cool.
Yeah, I've been really enjoying, quick aside, I've been really enjoying experiencing a lot of the movie reviews you've been doing. It's just good to see other people's takes and how you have a revolving cast of people on here. I think that's a really unique part of the podcast.
Yeah, I love it. I feel like a talk show host or like someone who's like showing off how many people they know, you know? No, like everyone's great, good friends and whatnot. But yeah, I guess with that, that's the end of the episode. Without further delay, have a good day.